Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. A talented stop motion animator becomes consumed by the grotesque world of her horrifying creations, with deadly results. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for Stop Motion. Right off the bat here, I just want to give a big thanks to the folks over at IFC Films for sending us over a screener for Stop Motion. Yes, this is an interesting, very interesting, very different horror film, which we've gotten a few of those this year so far. I like that I'm able to say that more and more. It's not just, bottom of the barrel Blumhouse stuff that we've kind of grown to accept from them, but I did not see a trailer for this. I only knew of the concept very briefly from this was actually an option for us, I believe, at Fantastic Fest. We didn't follow up on it just because I think we were just trying to get a few other films. And yeah, I was definitely happy that we got a chance to revisit it before its release on the 23rd here. And yeah, I mean, just kind of hopping into this film, it's kind of a mashup. It's a bit of a straightforward kind of horror psychological thriller, but with a lot of, as the title would suggest, stop motion elements to it. And you kind of look at that and you think maybe this will be more of a gimmick thing. This will be more of something that they're just kind of going to do to try to set themselves apart. And of course, that's the intent, but they really weave this into the story in a direction I did not expect. Because again, I didn't see the trailer. I didn't know anything about this other than the title and that IFC had acquired it. So going into this, I was completely blind. And I got to say, I was pretty darn impressed.
Yeah, for me, I had seen some rumblings, I think, on Twitter. It was in my peripheral view, honestly. It wasn't something that I had necessarily checked out. But then when I had realized we got in the screener for this one, I went and checked out the trailer just to see what I was in store for. And I got to be honest, I was rather excited from the way that trailer was cut and the imagery that we do see to kind of see how they were going to integrate this into the actual film itself. If this was going to be something that was going to be consistently throughout the film, or if it's just going to happen in a couple of moments and we're going to kind of really just focus in on our human characters. So I was really excited as we do see that stop motion aspect throughout this film. And like you said, they weave it seamlessly throughout. So it does feel like a natural part of the story. It doesn't seem like that gimmick. I think each portion of that stop motion aspect of it really does move the story further. And I think that part really makes this stand out because this is a film dealing with mental illness. This is a film dealing with those kind of familial relationship drama almost. And I think it's a really interesting aspect because we do see those ideas throughout lots of different films, especially in the horror genre. But I think the filmmaker here really did take that stop motion aspect of it and bring something new and something different that we don't necessarily ever see in this genre or really in filmmaking in general.
Yeah, I mean, stop motion, it's very underused. I would say that you get a lot of auteurs that use it, like Del Toro just recently did with his adaptation of Pinocchio, and people really loved it. I think it just comes down to the fact that it's very time consuming. It can be very expensive, but I mean, they really dive into the world of stop motion filmmaking and animation, really by setting our characters as a stop motion animator. And I was really on board with all of that. I thought that it was very interesting to see it, even though it is kind of a more of a detached approach because they're kind of on their own little journey with it. They kind of have their own studios and their own setups as far as our main character goes. And there's a reason for that. But seeing this world and really seeing it from the perspective of a filmmaker, Robert Morgan here, who's done a lot of stop motion in his filmography, if you look into it. And yeah, it's just one of those things. I was very impressed with how it went. And it was really interesting to actually see them put stop motion to use in the film with these very grotesque, interesting styles. And that's really, I think, where my biggest praise for this film comes into is the uniqueness of the concept and where they take the stop motion, especially when it comes to these little, clay figures and how they put them together and all the things they use to put them together. As the film progresses, it gets a lot more sadistic and a lot more interesting. And it is very, very open-ended, I would say, towards the end of the film. So it gives your brain a lot to chew on.
Yeah, and I mean, as the film progresses, that stop motion gets a little more and more demented as we go along. But even at the very opening, that aspect of diving into the world of a stop motion creator, and especially the dynamic between our main character and her mother, there, I think you're really introduced to what kind of dynamic we're going to be dealing with throughout the film. But even when we're introduced to, I guess, the more general concept of stop motion, it's not really has that demented aspect on it just yet. It is still a little off-putting for me. It was something where, as soon as they introduce it and they really focus down on it, I think it's one of those things where it heightens your fear a little more. And as they go, they kind of crescendo into it as to we get toward the end. And I think again, as we see the effect that the stop motion animation as well as mental illness has on our main character, I think they weave that in perfectly. There's some horrifying imagery between our stop motion kind of antagonist and our main character that is really going to sit with you. I think it's something that I did watch this film twice, and I'll say it was rather off-putting the first time I watched it, and then that second time I was really able to focus in on some of the scenes that I was almost anticipating. And there's a scene, probably I think it's in the last 10 minutes here, it's just
Mm,
absolutely horrific for me. So
yep.
I'll say, as the credits roll for stop motion, I'll say I have a handful of imagery in here that is going to stick with me, and I think it was just well done from that aspect of being able to deal with mental illness and kind of treat it with a sort of gravitas and realism that I think a lot of people are going to be able to draw parallels to in their own life, depending on, what kind of home life you come from, but also get lost in that hook of the stop motion creative aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be one of the harder sells for the film, and I think that's probably pretty smart if they're not really, hinging too hard on that in the marketing. If they're kind of leaning on the stop motion angle of it, because there's so many horror films today, especially, that it's kind of becoming a joke amongst a lot of the broader horror spaces that every horror film nowadays involves mental illness or trauma. And I mean, I think that there's an argument that all of the best horror films that we've ever seen throughout cinema have dealt with those aspects. But it seems like that's been a very heavy-handed approach, even for some of the lesser films. I think is where it comes off the worst. But this is definitely one that I agree with you 100%. The way that they sell it, the way they use it, it's not heavy-handed. It feels very natural. They use it very I would say maturely. They don't make it too over the top with all the stuff they're doing. I think maybe towards the third act, you could argue that it gets a little over the top with it, but I mean, it is one of those things where it's like we have really set the ground forward. We've built up everything to this moment that the film earns it. And I will say, for me, watching this movie, it is a breeze. It's only an hour and 33 minutes. Um, this was a good movie throughout, but I would say the third act, the final segment, it does exactly what every film is supposed to do, where it locks you in completely. And there were some concepts, some imagery, some execution of how the final elements of the story weave together that just really sent chills up my spine and really gave me some imagery that will stick with me, I think, for a while to come. This is definitely going to be one I want to pick up on Blu-ray, and one that I'll definitely recommend to people.
Yeah, and as we get toward that end, that third act, and I know what you're speaking of, I think people got to look at it the lens of we are watching a horror movie. This isn't everyone's journey through mental illness, and it's not necessarily something as a commentary of this is everyone that suffers from mental illness. This is something where we are dropped in the life of a creative who has a tormented background, and it continues throughout. The duration of the film up until there's a catalyst in there that a lot of things do ensue. So I think I urge people to, if you do watch this and you come from that lens, remember you are watching a horror film, and I think it does work. Like you said, I think the film does earn it, and I think there is While not over the top, I think there's some great gore in here that I think when they do use it, they do make it count. And again, it will stick with you. It does feel natural. It feels real when you kind of go toward, I guess, more of a human aspect of violence. And then also just the off-puttingness and kind of the violence toward these stop motion characters. Because as we kind of integrate some of the human aspect with the stop motion, I think that's some of the best off-putting parts of this actual film.
Yeah, I really like the use of the gore in this movie. I think that every set piece that uses a little bit of violence, gore, and even when it's not like being portrayed on a character, it is very gruesome. It did leave me a little bit cringing and a little bit queasy, but not in like the sense of like, oh, that looks stupid. It was very effective, and
Yes.
I got to give that to the sound design for that too. There were a couple of sequences in here where they're just playing with something, and the sound was definitely playing to its strengths there. And it's something that I definitely would love to explore a little bit deeper at some point down the road. So this would be a great podcast potential pick here, because this would be one that, like, there's a lot of stuff even just before we hit record that Luke and I were kind of talking about our theories and thoughts, and I think those are some of the best films. I think for me, I would definitely say that this is a strong recommend on my point. I don't think it gets to a must see for me, but I got to give it a strong recommend. It could change, it could lean over there, but I only got to watch it one time, so I would like to see it again.
Yes. I just want to highlight real quick. Uh, Robert Morgan, the director, co-wrote with Robin King, and I think there's a lot of great imagery in here. The usage of red, I think, is really well
Hmm.
done as well. It kind of really draws your eye. So I just want to kind of highlight that for a second. I think a lot of beautiful shots in here. Again, working with that stop motion aspect of it really is well done. For me, did watch this twice. This is a high tier recommend for me right now. Honestly, with a couple more watches, this could end up being a must see just because of that stop motion aspect of it. I don't know necessarily if we're gonna get too many more films like this. This is
Oh, I
kind of
doubt
like a
it.
Hundreds of Beavers, where
Hmm.
not maybe to that like completely to that aspect of it, but it really does get to that moment of real intrigue, very different. So for me, high tier recommend, could easily be a must see with a few more watches. So definitely check this one out.
Yeah, and again, this thing's going to be hitting theaters on February 23rd, so this upcoming Friday for you. Definitely go seek this one out. It's definitely one of the better things we've had in theaters recently, as well as this is going to be hitting Shudder at some point down the road. I don't know if there's an official release date for that, but keep your eye out on that. And we'll definitely keep you guys posted when this puppy goes streaming. But for sure, seek this one out if you like. Really well done, really well paced, very high concept, interesting horror. I think that's really what you're going to get here. And yeah, we're definitely big fans of it. Very good showing. And yeah, I think the last piece I did want to highlight, just as a little uh, off the cuff here, Aisling Franciosi, I think is her name. She was in The Nightingale. I knew I recognized her from something. Really great performance. I mean, she's absolutely mesmerizing in The Nightingale, and she delivers here as well. She does a great job. Although I think her performance in The Nightingale is a bit more intense and a bit more, showing her prowess here. It's like I think that this film does a really great job of, having a more of a subtle kind of performance in this one, and I think that she does an excellent, excellent job.
Absolutely, and I'll just touch on that for 1 second. Like you said, I don't think it has that range that the Nightingale has, but for this one, I think the art is in that subtlety, especially when you're dealing with mental illness. You don't want to be
Hmm.
completely off the chain because it comes off as a little over exaggerated, especially when you're dealing with mental illness. You have to really walk that line. But I think she does it beautifully. Everything she does is believable. Her reactions are believable for me. So I can really get lost in this journey with our character here. So I was totally on board with the acting, the concept here. Again, real high tier recommend.
Absolutely. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up here for our review of Stop Motion. Let us know if you're going to check this thing out or if you just saw it and you want to talk about it a little bit. Let's keep the spoilers to an absolute zero on this. I don't want anything to get ruined for people as they go into our comments. Not saying anyone's done that, but just because this is definitely one I went into with nothing other than the title and some brief imagery, and I'm so happy I did. So I want to keep it that way for a lot of people if possible. So other than that, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel, folks. We do have some fun reviews out there now. We did see another film earlier this month, Out of Darkness, another great one to go check out to the theater if you can see it. And yeah, we do have a lot of fun videos up there. I know we talked about some Predator news recently. We talked about the trailer for an upcoming film called Sting, which is a space spider movie. Looks pretty fun and done. But yep. Alrighty, other than that, I guess that's gonna wrap it up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.